the Conservative MP, Damien Collins. He's supporting Boris Johnson. Damien Collins, welcome to the programme. There's quite a lot of talk of skullduggery at this stage of the race, of votes being lent here and there. I mean, the front page of the Telegraph this morning says, Johnson hatches plot to knock out Gove. Tory frontrunner supporters could vote tactically as they hope for Hunt in the final two. Is that true?
No, it's not true. Firstly, I don't think it matters who the number two is.
Anne Widdecombe's laughing there, by the way.
Well, she's entitled to.
Vote tactically.
She's seen a few Tory.
She's seen more leadership elections than I have. I don't know what it was like in the old days, but look, I don't think I don't think it matters necessarily who comes second. I think they're all very experienced cabinet ministers, and they've got different qualities. They will all, I think, be part of a leadership debate which is full of challenge and inquiry.
But which one does Mr. Johnson fear the most?
I don't think he fears any of them.
But he must have a view that one would be tougher than another.
I think what he is doing, and I think what he's best served to do, is concentrate on getting his own supporters through the lobbies to vote for him and not worrying about other people. Ultimately, in any leadership election, you try and win the support of your colleagues and you try and have a block of people that will vote for you, and you either control those votes or you don't. And if you don't control them, then you've got no real say in what those people will do.
Have you voted for any other candidate in this race?
No, I voted for Boris all the way through.
Right from the start?
Yeah, and
How do we know that?
How do we know? Well,
we don't.
Well, actually, my first vote was cast by proxy because I was on a select committee at the moment. So you could ask by proxy whether he did. I'm taking his word for it that he voted the way I asked him to. But given he's a Boris supporter as well, I'd be surprised if he didn't.
And Widdecombe, tell them why skullduggery happens in Conservative leadership elections.
Oh, because very often candidates do have a view as to who they want eliminated early. And if they are sufficiently far ahead, they will, so to speak, lend their votes tactically to others to ensure that they have the right line-up at the end. It's a very, very common phenomenon in, I'm terribly sorry, Damien, at leadership elections. Now, Andrew asked how we know that you voted for Boris throughout. I know, because I know you to be an honourable man. But that, I'm afraid, is not universal.
Well, I can only speak for myself.
Very well. And for Boris Johnson, which is why you're here today.
Yeah.
Mark Wallace, Conservative Home, you follow these things. Has there been a bit of skullduggery in this campaign?
Well, there's definitely been dreaming of skullduggery at minimum.
Dreaming of?
You've put your finger
What kind of person dreams of skullduggery?
A politician, to start off with. I think part of the difficulty you've put your finger on is this is a secret ballot of politicians. It's more secretive and, dare I say, sometimes more misleading than even a secret ballot of the general electorate. And that in itself complicates things. I think there's an extra factor, which is even MPs who think they would be really nice to do some cunning wheezers and cunning schemes, they're not necessarily always successful in pulling them off, and they have backfired in the past as well. People have accidentally put through somebody who they thought was a dead cert to beat, only to see, say, Ian Duncan-Smith become leader of the Conservative Party.
Yeah.
Mr. Johnson has another supporter this morning. George Osborne, formerly Chancellor of the Exchequer, leading Remainer. This is from his Evening Standard, where he is now the editor. We back Boris Johnson, he says. And in the op-ed, he says that in the editorial endorsing him in the London Evening Standard, ask yourself which of these potential prime ministers is most likely to persuade the Conservative Party to vote for a repacked version of the existing deal. And it goes on to conclude that Boris Johnson is the man. And he also says, or he might allow a second referendum. What do you think of that, Damien?
Well, I don't think the second referendum will happen. I think what Boris has demonstrated, though, and this is why I'm not surprised that he's got George Osborne's endorsement and the endorsement of people like Matt Hancock as well, is that Boris has been able to build a very broad coalition across the Conservative Party to support his campaign. I think people recognise this in many ways as a period of political crisis caused by the fact that Brexit hasn't been delivered when we said it was going to be delivered, and people want a bold, dynamic figure who can get this done.
Who has come out with some grossly offensive things about large portions of our country.
Yeah, I heard what you said earlier, Chucker, about that. I don't think you can caricature someone in that way who could successfully be mayor of one of the most multicultural cities in the world, elected, served for 8 years, who's worked with people from all sorts of backgrounds, endorsed by members of Parliament like Alex Sharma and Kwasi Kwarteng. I can't say...
So it's OK for him to come out with flagrantly racist comments among a whole host of other offensive things about large portions of our community. And we just normalise it by seemingly putting him in number 10.
I think people are interested in the big picture. They're interested in the big issues.
Let me tell you something.
No.
As a person
Chucker,
of
you've
colour,
had a good go on this. You've had a good go on this.
Describing black people as pickaninnies and having watermelon smiles is a big issue.
OK, so we'll let Anne Widdecombe
You've had several goes on this.
No, you can answer.
Can you hear from somebody else? I think what people are interested in is the big issue. And I actually think it will be a step forward if instead of trawling through everybody's past statements to find something that is going to be offensive, you actually concentrate on their ability to deliver and what they're going to be delivered.
All right.
That will be a big step forward in British politics.
Well, let me come on to the...
compared Muslim women
Let me come on to the...
Excuse
me, I'm conducting this debate. Let me come on to the big picture. For Boris Johnson, is Theresa May's withdrawal agreement dead?
Yes. Absolutely.
It's over.
Over. I think that Parliament, Anne's right. Parliament has said so.
So he's going to negotiate a new deal.
So what Boris has said is that the basis of his negotiation will be in support of the only thing the House of Commons has agreed on so far, which is the removal of the backstop provision, so that if there is a transition when we leave, there is an end date, or we have the ability to trigger an end date.
That's the May deal with one change. So it's not dead.
Well, no, a very significant change.
Yeah, but one change.
But I think hugely significant, because it addresses the issue that the Northern Ireland MPs were so aggrieved about and wouldn't support.
No, I understand that, but you've just completely contradicted yourself. I asked you quite clearly, is the May deal dead? You said, yes, it is. Yeah. And within 10 seconds, you said, well, actually, we'll just make one change to it, and then we'll get it through.
A fundamental change, which completely changes
So it's an amended May deal?
Yeah, but that's totally different from the May deal.
No, it's not. It's one change.
Well, a really important, really significant change.
But Mr Johnson's supporters have been telling the Steve Bakers and hardline ERGs of this world that the May deal is dead.
It is dead.
So he's telling you one thing and he's telling the ERG something else.
Well, no, it's the same thing, because the amendment passed is massively significant.
It's not dead. I've had Johnson people brief me that he simply wants one change to the withdrawal agreement on the backstop, and he'll accept it.
Yeah, but
so it's the May deal with one amendment is what he wants.
I think we both are looking at this from slightly different perspectives. I think the May deal amended in that way is not the May deal. It's something very, very different.
But if it's only one sentence that's changed, and my understanding is what he wants is to say that in the event of the future negotiations failing to come to any agreement, that the backstop will cease to exist after a certain amount of time. That's the only change, I'm told, he's looking for. Well, so he hopes to get an amended deal through.
If that is not significant, why did the EU reject it?
Yeah, but you know, Andrew, you know why this is so significant, because...
So he is trying to get the May deal through with one change.
Yeah, but that is not the May deal. We've been talking about this issue, the backstop, for 9 months now.
It is the May deal with one change, I'm afraid.
Help me here.
I mean, Theresa May thought it wasn't her deal, and the EU thought it wasn't the deal they'd signed, because they signed the deal as it was. I think the fact is, if he's keeping some elements of the May deal, that in itself is going to be controversial.
He's keeping every element of the May deal in this scenario, except the backstop.
Yeah, which was the single issue which has divided the Parliament on the backstop.
So does Steve Baker and the ERG, do they get happy with this?
Yeah,
he's produced a paper that's attacked the withdrawal agreement on about a dozen different fronts.
But if you, Andrew, as you'll remember, this removal of the backstop was also part of the process that was known as the Malthouse Compromise, where people like Steve Baker came together because what they realised was we were no longer binding ourselves into a negotiating process where we could be locked into the customs union or something like it. We could still look at a free trade agreement and aspects of the free trade agreement that people like Steve Baker wanted. We would be keeping our options open during the transition, and that's why they came together to support it, and that's why that amendment got through the House of Commons. This may only be one change. It may sound like a small technical change, but it totally changes the way this process would work afterwards and will lead to a very different outcome.
There's two issues. One is it's highly unlikely that the EU would ever accept the Malthouse Compromise. I met with one of the largest countries yesterday, one of their senior diplomats. That is not going to happen. Secondly, what I think probably will happen is that Johnson will seek to find an excuse for going for an extension, which is quite likely to be granted at least for a few months. And the excuse that will be given will be twofold. One is I think he'll get into government and say, I've arrived and found we're totally not ready to leave without a deal. We need a few more months. And secondly, he will appoint an Attorney General who will do for him what Geoffrey Cox did not do for May and provide some excuse as to why some tweak to the withdrawal agreement or a codicil actually does the job that the likes of the ERG want.
Do Boris Johnson's supporters realise that he's trying to do what David Collins has said, that he simply wants one change affecting the backstop, an important change, but one change, and it's the rest of the May withdrawal agreement? Do they realise that?
I think some do. I think people are more acutely aware of
essentially
what you've just said, which is that there's a risk that there are different things being said in different parts of this race. And, for example, Boris Johnson did win, as far as we can gather, the ERG hustings, which was only between him and Dominic Raab, by being effectively seen by the ERG as more firm on a guaranteed exit, deal or no deal, by the 31st of October. It would be fair to say there are some people who are a little unnerved by slightly more vague language since then.
But can I just say as well, it's not just that...
Let me hear from Liz, then I'll come to you. Hold on.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a sense among some people that Boris is saying different things to different people behind closed doors. I think there's also something else going on, which is that people like Damien are projecting their own wishes onto Boris because he's been so absent from the debate. So they're deciding, well, this is what I want for Brexit, so maybe Boris is going to deliver this for me, and then they're just going along that road.
I'm basing it on the things he's said and the things he's written during this campaign, which he's been really clear on what he would seek to renegotiate and what would happen if he did.
Well, there's only one thing.
He's left the door open for no deal, Damien.
He did say very, very clearly to the ERG, and he did say very clearly in public at the beginning of all of this, that we'd leave on the 31st of October. Now he's saying it's eminently feasible that we leave on the... Now, which is it? Are we leaving, or is it merely feasible?
I think the eminently feasible is talking about eminently feasible to get a renegotiated deal. He believes that is eminently feasible. But if not, we leave at the end of October...
Without a deal.
Without a deal.
Are you happy with that?
How's it practically going to be possible to do your deal by the end of October? Not least because the presidencies of the different institutions of the EU are changing, the commissioners will be changing. We have the August months, the August weeks ahead, and you're not going to get a new leader until...
But if he only wants one change, and he will probably put it in the words of, I just want one sentence changed. I simply want it to be said that if future partnership negotiations break down, the backstop will not pertain anymore. That's all he'll want. And that can be done in a week. But we don't know the EU is going to go down that road, of course. If they don't, and if the EU sticks to its guns, are you happy to leave on no deal? Are you prepared to leave on no deal on October the 31st?
It's not the outcome. Leaving that deal is not the outcome I sought from the start of this process. But I think now, failure to leave at the end of October, a further extension, I think will ramp up the anger and the tensions in this country now, which has undermined confidence in the whole political system. I think we have to be prepared to leave. I think we have to say to the EU there will not be an extension. And I think we have to focus minds now to say this process ends on the 31st of October.
And what will Mr Johnson do if Parliament stops you from leaving on October the 31st?
I think Parliament then has a decision it has to make, one way or another, which is, does it wish to revoke Article 50 or does it wish to leave without a deal? I do not believe the House of Commons will vote to revoke Article 50.
No, but it could still vote to stop a deal.
Well, the decision on whether we extend or not is a decision actually made at the European Council by the Prime Minister. It's not actually a decision...
Yes, but we have to ask for it.
Well, if the Prime Minister and the government make clear they will not seek an extension, and of course it may not even be granted. I mean, President Macron has been very reluctant to grant any extension so far.
We've had some tweets from Steve Baker. Can we just get them up? Are we? Right. We've had some tweets from Steve Baker showing he wants a lot more than just the change in the backstop. Is Mr Johnson agreeing with that?
Well, Boris has set out his objectives in the renegotiation many times. Steve will be aware of that. And then the question is, during the transition period, if we got this renegotiation, which we haven't got so far, if we got that during the transition period, there are all sorts of negotiations then about the nature of our trading relationship, the nature of our future relationship with Europe, that are resolved during the transition.
But Steve Baker, speaking for part of the ERG, of the Tory Brexiteers, says that one of the things he doesn't want, which is in the May agreement, the May withdrawal agreement, is for the ECJ to continue to be the top court with the jurisdiction over the UK during the transition period. Does Mr Johnson want to change that?
Well, I think that would be open for negotiation as we see.
No, but you can't negotiate unless he wants to change it. Does Mr Johnson want to change that?
Well, I think. You don't
know, do you?
Well, no, I think the negotiation is based on the backstop primarily. Now, whatever else can be discussed, that's...
Does Mr Johnson, does he accept... Hold on, Anne, I'm trying to get some clarity here.
Well, there isn't any.
Does he accept, or does he not, the continued jurisdiction of the ECJ during a transition period?
Well, during the transition, as set out in the agreement, we will still be members of the single market, until we leave. Now,
so he does accept that?
Well, that is the rules as they establish at the moment.
I'm not asking you what the rules are. I'm well aware. I know what the rules are because I've read the rules. What I'm asking you is, does Mr Johnson want to change the rules? Or does he go along with Steve Baker, saying we can't have the ECJ rule? A pretty hard ask, I would think, because they're not going to agree if we're still within the single market. But let me put that to the side. Or does Mr Johnson, as part of the negotiation, want to change that too?
Well, the principal objective is on the backstop. And whatever is renegotiated, then Boris will still have to get the House and the party to agree to that anyway.
No, I understand that, but that's the process. What I'm trying to do is establish the principle. So you said that Mr Johnson has laid out his renegotiation plan for a next round of negotiations if he becomes Prime Minister. Other than trying to get a change to the backstop, what else is in that plan?
For the renegotiation?
Yes.
Well, that is the main objective, because...
So it's not a plan, it's one point.
Well, no, because the point Boris has made is that if you look at what has the House of Commons agreed to so far, what is the basis of getting an agreement through? The basis of getting it through is the Malthouse Compromise, the Brady Amendment, which was about removing the backstop so that we can transition to a free trade agreement with the EU.
Hold on. You said that Mr Johnson had clearly laid out his negotiating plan. And I'm asking you what is in that plan. And other than changing the backstop, there is no plan.
Well, that is, as I said, the key aspect of the plan.
Well, it's the only aspect.
But it's very, as I said at the beginning, I think it's a very fundamentally important one.
If it's the key aspect, logically, there must be other aspects for one to be key, unless it's the only one, and therefore, by definition, it's key. If it's the key aspect, what are the other aspects of his renegotiation plan?
Well, it is based on that objective, which is removed with the backstop provisions, so that we could have an open discussion on transition and not be bound by potential membership of the Customs Union for a prolonged period of time. And that is something that I think there's been a consensus of in the Conservative Party for some time now as the key change that we wanted. Now, as Steve Baker said, there will be people that have got other views on things they would like as part of that negotiation as well, and we will have to get behind whatever comes. And it may well be that we have to make a decision that if we've been successful in some things, like getting rid of the backstop, but not in others, we'll have to decide whether that is good enough.
But I still don't... I mean, we're coming to that. I still don't know. More important, I don't think our viewers know whether Mr Boris Johnson is going to ask for anything more than a change to the backstop.
But I think that where we differ is I think that changes fundamentally the nature of the transition period.
I'm not arguing about the importance of it. I'm simply saying it's a one-trick pony. That's the plan. It's a one-trick pony.
But if he doesn't get it, he'll leave without a deal.
Yes, exactly.
All right.
When did you change your mind on that, Damien? Because you said on no deal. Because you've said before that that would be a terrible thing to do and that Parliament should stop it.
Because I think we have to look at what's happened, the consequences of this process being elongated, the impact that has had, and therefore the risk for me is great. The risk of running this process for another year is much greater than the risk of leaving without a deal.
So when did that change?
Well, for me,
when you decided to support Boris Johnson?
I made that decision before. That was one of the reasons I supported Boris Johnson, because I believed that we had to bring this process to a close.
All right.
The risks of not doing that are greater than the potential risks of a no-deal Brexit.
Didn't you change your mind when the Brexit party started topping the polls?
No, it
wasn't it then?
No, it wasn't then.
Damien.
No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't then, because I think we could see. I think most MPs can see that this has caused a lot of anger, and the consequence of this is an undermining in our whole political system and in Parliament. People from Parliament's not working for them. We have to deal with that.
I have to deal with this too. We've run out of time. Damien Collins, we'll let you want to be over there for the next result. It's going to be coming out. Let me see, just under 20 minutes now. We'll get it. Damien Collins, thank you for being with us here. Let's talk.